Hello and welcome to episode 55 of the barn door restoration. Last episode I finished off the kick panel. This episode, dash beam is finished. So the dash beam goes across below the windshield, sits on the front. This lip here actually is the part of the windshield opening. The windshield rubber goes over this lip. And it supports the front end. It also holds the dash pod. So there's a couple angles with T-nuts welded in them for the dash pod to set in. Now, a deluxe bus would have had a full width dash, so it had holes with nuts across here, and then the dash would bolt into. So there's two slots here for the defogger vents, and there's 4 holes with T-nuts behind them, and that's for the grab handle that sits here. And on the back side, put this right side up. There's a bracket, and that reinforces this section for the wiper motor. So the wiper motor bracket bolts through these holes. And there's also a tab here, just a thin piece of metal that's welded on, that holds the harness for the wiper motor. Now there's also some screw holes across here, and the interior panels, there's like hardboard panels that go on the interior, and they screw through these holes. It's about 0.8 millimeter steel. It varies because of the pressing, but it's around 0.8. So this piece in the bus actually looked like it was in decent shape. Once I got it out, I could see where the rust was. In fact, this piece that goes right here, when it was in the bus, didn't have any holes in it here. I poked those in after. So it looked pretty good, but what I didn't see was how much pitting was in the backside, how rusty it was. I'm assuming water leaked around the windshield and pooled in on this bottom. So when it sets in the vehicle, this section here must have pooled water on it and rotted. So quite a bit of rust in this section had to be replaced, and both ends had a lot of work. Like that piece goes in there. This piece kind of went in like that. So these ends where they welded into the A-pillars were rotten. And that was mostly, I think, because of the effect the welding had on the metal when they welded them in. It caused it to corrode worse than other spots. And the sections of where the window rubber goes on were rotted out. In fact, on the front of both vents, I had to replace. That was all full of holes. So to repair this, same as I do on most stuff, I cut out all the obvious rust. So I knew these sections. I'd already did some tapping on the back, realized how thin it was. Well, there's also some holes in it. There's quite a bit of pitting, but sometimes it's a little hard to see how much. So I cut out what I could see I knew needed to be replaced, and then media blasted it. Just a quick blast. And that revealed a few other spots. So this piece here actually was down in this section. That revealed a lot of very deep pitting inside, and actually some holes that went through. So from the outside it looked nice. It looked like it was still painted, but it blew holes through when I blasted it. The same with the piece over on this end. I think it went about there. And it's full of holes. There was actually another piece in there that I cut out. So after the initial blasting, trimmed a few more pieces out of it, and I decided to remove this bracket because I realized there was some rust in this top, right in that section. So I removed that bracket out, cleaned that up. The bracket had a few rust spots in it that I need to repair. And the tab for the wiring harness, I thought I was going to be able to save, but there was a rust hole directly above it, and to weld that in I actually damaged it, so I removed it and put a new one in. Probably should have just done that to start with. So once I had it, basically everything chopped out of it, started making the patches. So these ends are quite easy, just a few bends, and not too big a deal. This patch here was a bit more of an issue. So it was actually quite a bit longer because I had these pieces on it here like that. So it's quite a bit bigger piece. So the first thing, this is curved, and then this rolls. So I need to bend that bend in there to get it all the right shape. I decided to start with that bend, and I hand formed that. The first thing I did, I actually marked it. I put my piece of metal down, I traced this curve on it, and I run it through the bead roller with a radius die and just put a crease there. And that works really well when you're hand dolling, to have a little bit of a crease to start, and you keep your curve nice and straight or even. Trying to do it like just drawing the line on it, trying to do it, it's hard to do. If there's a crease there, the metal tries to bend on that crease, and it gives you that an even bend. So I bent that by hand dolling it over a radius die, and that actually worked out pretty good. So after I had that, it was a little wobbly. I figured the easiest way to strengthen everything up was to put these lower bends on. So, and that kept the patch straight, so I could work it a little bit more. As I had to stretch, well actually, what did I have to do? I had to stretch this metal here quite a bit, because once you roll it over on that curve, it tried to pull it in, so it was rolled up in the middle. So I had to stretch this metal out to try and get it to lay flat. But while doing that, I decided I do put these bends in it to stiffen this section. Now, because this has a curve in it, these are straight on both sides. And my brake, when I built it, I wanted to make sure I could bend something like that. So the hinges on the end, I unbolt them, and that allows me to get this piece in the brake with the other end hanging out. So I was able to put these bends in it. In this curve here, there's too much material to shrink, so I actually cut it, formed it, and welded it. But that stiffened it up so I could work this a little easier. So after I had these two bends in, stiffened this part up nicely, I had to deal with this front face. So this face has a curve this way, but also rolls up. And also that metal, because I had to stretch this so much, had the teeth marks from the stretcher. So the type of stretcher I have, it grabs the metal and pulls, so it leaves a roughness in the metal. You can hammer and dolly that out, but the English wheel works really good taking it out also. And the other thing, because of that curve, what I use is my English wheel with a very light radius lower wheel. So when I rolled it, it put that curve in it and took the rippling out from the stretching. Now my English wheel is it's a bit small. It was very cheap, but it actually works quite well for this stuff. I'm not sure how it's going to work for larger panels. I'm probably going to have to get a better one, but for this type of stuff, it actually works quite well. So that rolled that very nicely. Now I had to fit it in here, and that took quite a bit of time trying to get it to fit. So I set it in and mark it, cut it, grind it, set it in, mark it until it fit in there. And one of the big problems with something like this, because this is flexible, it's got quite a bit of, especially with all this cut out of it, it was really springy. The patch is very odd shape. In welding it together, as soon as you try to weld it, it starts to pull. The metal pulls. It shrinks where you weld it. So I started putting a few welds in, and it started to move. So I had to cut a few out and try different ways of welding it to try and keep it all nice, and so I didn't end up with weird warps or buckles in it. So after a while, I got it going along pretty good, and ended up tacking it all through, and then grind it back, and then continuously weld it. And that worked out pretty good. I had a few pinholes I had to weld in. They were deep pits, but they were fairly isolated. So there's a few on this bottom that were just individual pits that were deep. I just build those back in with weld, grind them flat. They weren't through, so Actually, there's a couple of them that were through, but they weld in quite nicely. It's where the pitting is constant. You can't do anything with it because it would just be solid weld. Also, the metal is so thin in places that it would just burn through instantly. So I got all the patches welded in. The ends here, and that's where it kind of goes up around the window frame. And actually, try this one. This is the passenger side. So this part goes in right there. And that little point comes up around the window frame. I wasn't quite sure how far that was supposed to go up, because this section here, where it should be, just looks like all weld. There's no flat metal there, it's just all gobs of weld. And I don't know if they burnt through and kind of welded it back in. And the other one didn't really have anything there. Now my 64, it does come up like this, and I can see where it was welded by the window rubber. And eventually I found a photo of a new old stock beam, so a replacement beam that was made back when they were assembling these trucks, and it had these ends sticking up like this. So I'm not 100% sure how far up we're supposed to go, but I'm going to probably have to trim a little bit of this when I actually fit all this in the truck. When I get it all arranged up there, I'll probably have to grind this a little bit, fit it in. But I wanted to make sure it was at least, I wanted to make sure it was not too small. I wanted to make sure it was bigger than it needed to be. So I'll probably have to take a little bit off. And when the windshield frame goes in, I might have to grind a little on the inside too. It's a lot easier to take off later than it is to try and add it back on. Now, once it was all welded up, I had quite a bit of time hammer and dolling to make it perfect. This section here, even though I had the patch looking very close, once it was welded, had a little ripples to it. And where the welding seams weren't perfect. So I hammer and dolly as close as I could get, and I used a flat file to run down this. That shows off where the low spots and high spots are. So I had a few passes with the file, hammer and dolly a bit, a few passes of the file, hammer and dolly. Really not taking much material off. When you're doing that, it's basically just scraping the metal. So I worked at that quite a bit, get this all nice and straight. And then run over it with a sander. And the sander will also show some low spots. And usually pretty easy to bring them back. It's time consuming, you have to be patient with it. And there is a few little dips, but they're just grinding imperfections. And a layer of filler primer will probably take those out without an issue. So once I got all the metal smoothed out nicely and sanded, I welded in a few of the parts. So the bracket for the windshield wiper motor, I spot welded that in. There's a little tab for the wiring for the wiper motor, tab to hold that in. I think there's also wires that go up the center post to the ceiling. I can't remember for sure, but I think there was. Oh, and then there's one of the brackets for the dash pod. I had to replace this piece of steel here, so I had to replace that. And they're just spot welded on. Once they're all on, I media blasted it again. Because the first time I media blast, I don't do a real good job. In fact, you can see here the darkness. There's still rust in this metal. And that's why I don't do a great job the first time around. It would have been a waste trying to get all that rust out and then cut this off. And actually there wasn't a lot of the pitted metal left. There's a bit down here. And so anyway, the second media blast, I really get in and make sure I get every bit of rust out. And where you do work, it gives it a nice texture. So when you put the zinc on, it looks nice and smooth. So media blast, coat of zinc. A real good coat in the backside where it's not going to get painted again. But the front face just gets a real thin spray just to keep it looking good and keep it from rusting. Because this will get cleaned off back to steel again when it gets its finished paint. So that's about what I've accomplished for this episode. The next episode, I think, is going to be the windshield frame. I need that to kind of get everything in place up in the front. So I'll probably do that next episode. Drones. I uploaded the drones for the kick panel from last episode. The drones for this are not up yet. They probably will be within the week. I still haven't got the checking the ones for the B pillar yet. So there's a link in the description for the GrabCAD where my files are located. And again, if anybody sees any mistakes or issues with the drones, please let me know. Well, that wraps up this episode. I want to try a little experiment though. I like everybody hit the like button. I report back next episode on what the results are. Thanks for the comments. I appreciate them, and thanks for watching.